Hey guys, so I wanted to put out a video. I just started my YouTube channel not too long ago, but I want to put out a video just like my martial arts journey, how I got started. So I want to start with like take it right back to the beginning, pretty much what got me into it. When I was a kid, I was super interested, like pretty much in anything like martial arts related for like cartoons. Like when I grew up, it was a lot of like Dragon Ball Z stuff like that. But what actually got me started was my brother and my uncle. So they used to always like they'd have a set of boxing gloves, and they'd each have one glove. We didn't have two sets, so they'd each have one glove. One guy would take the left hand, one guy would take the right, and they would just they could only hit with the one hand, and they would box each other all the time. Or they'd have like my uncle was just known for street fighting a lot, so my brother kind of learned from him, and then my brother thought it was important for me to kind of learn how to handle myself on the streets. Um, but so when I was young, what they would do is I grew up in like a complex where like there was a lot of kids around, and this was probably I moved to Ontario when I was about three, so I was probably about 4 or 5 at the time. And what happened was they would just go around and be like, they'd like look for kids that were bigger than me usually, and just be like, hey, like go fight that kid. Like I'd be like, okay. Like I looked up to my brother and my uncle a lot. So being a young kid, they would kind of just want me to go fight kids, right? So I didn't want to, and I knew if I didn't fight those kids, they'd probably they'd probably do something harsh to me anyway. So I might as well go deal with the kid anyway, right? So probably wasn't the best thing to do, but I mean that's what they did, right? So I would go around. I'd say hey to like kid. I would usually like ask them like, hey, let's fight, and I had no reason why, but the first time I did it, like I think the first kid I wanted to fight, he actually he was actually picking on a kid. So there's this little kid. I remember he was stuck up in a tree, and he was some tiny kid, like he was just as small as me, and there was some big kid who was like trying to pick on him, and he was probably a year or two older. And I remember just the kid was like petrified to come down from this tree. So I actually felt really bad for him, and I was like, hey, like why don't you fight me instead, right? Because I was like, here's my opportunity, kind of, right? So I was like, why don't you fight me instead? He's like, no, I want to fight this kid. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna fight you anyway, so let's go. And I tackled the kid was much bigger. I ran like head into him. I tackled him into a fence. I got him down, and I just got on top and I started punching him. And he like I got up, I on top like after I started punching him in the face. And I was super young, but I still remember these moments. Like it's kind of funny how you can remember these things. But I remember he got up and I said, "You leave that kid alone, or or we're gonna do this again." And that kid left him alone. So even though like I don't like recommend just going and fighting people for any reason, the kid was being bullied, and it did put a stop to it. So I was pretty happy about that. So there was something that good that actually came out of it. So then it seemed like my brother and my uncle kind of they were looking for more kids that were bullying other kids at that point. So I remember when I was so then I kind of like I liked the fact that I could help this kid and not make him afraid anymore, right? So I right away I kind of liked the idea of that having that confidence, and I was a smaller kid myself, so I didn't want somebody just looking at me and thinking they can pick on me and me not sticking up for myself, right? Um, so what happened was we moved to a different complex, and I was probably about 5 or 6 at this time. And actually, this is how I met like my best friend. So I met my best friend, and I can't remember how it happened, but when he first moved into this complex, just slightly after me, and then I don't know like whether like something happened, whatever. We ended up fighting somehow, right? So we had a fight. After the fight, I felt super bad about like the fight. Like for some reason, I like I felt bad, so I went up. I like apologized to him, and then after that, we were best friends ever since that day. We were probably 6 at the time, so we became best friends. Like him and I were like inseparable. We were just like spending every day together. I'd go over there. We'd watch Dragon Ball Z, or we'd like play Sega all the time. Play like Street Fighter, like all the old school, and we'd like just act like we were guys from Street Fighter. We'd dress up like ninjas and kind of always that was our thing. Like, we weren't really into any team sports, anything. We were into like fighting, and like we liked Mortal Kombat, we liked Street Fighter. So it was just something we were drawn to. And so I remember another kid moved into this complex. There was tons of kids around playing when I was a kid. This was in the late 90s. So what happened was another kid moved in, and him and my friend started fighting. And I think the other kid started getting the better of my friend a little bit. And I remember my brother and my uncle were like, hey, like, go help him, right? So then I told the kid, I said, get off of him and let's go. Like, me and you are going to go right now. And then sure enough, so him and I go at it. I get the better of him. I kind of like always got the better of these kids just because I wasn't afraid, and I just liked fighting, right? So I was aggressive, and I liked to fight. I didn't want to necessarily hurt people. I just liked doing it. Like, there was just something about it that I was always kind of gravitating towards. So from there on, because he was getting the better of my friend, I think my best friend's dad, he thought it was a good idea maybe to put him in martial arts, right? So he went into martial arts first, and then I was like to my mom and dad, like, he's in martial arts, like, I want to join martial arts as well, right? Like, so I think like a month later, I was joining martial arts as well, right? So we were probably 6 at the time, joined martial arts together, and then he joined slightly earlier than me, and I'm like, whatever he's doing, I want to start learning this too, right? Like, anything he did, I wanted to do, just like being best friends, right? And I enjoyed fighting also. So it was probably a good thing I started martial arts. Like, it actually calmed me down a lot. Ever since I joined martial arts, like, we were always taught by my coach to, like, don't fight unless it's absolutely necessary. More like a self-defense, right? So it actually calmed me down a lot. I might have, if I didn't join martial arts, I probably would have just kept street fighting kids, and who knows what would have came from it, right? So I'm going to go on to, like, that's pretty much what got me wanting to join martial arts. It was just always something I wanted to do when I was a kid. I never wanted to do any team sports or anything. So when I started martial arts, I was 6 years old. So back then it was like late 90s. It's a lot different. UFC just came out in 93, so it wasn't like super new. UFC was it wasn't super old. UFC was still pretty new. So I didn't know anything about UFC, nothing about MMA. It wasn't called MMA back then. It was just called like the type of style of martial arts that I joined was originally called Gs2. So with Gs2, there was a belt ranking system, which I kind of liked when I was a young kid. So we kind of learned like it was pretty much like MMA, but it wasn't called MMA back then. We were learning a little bit of striking, a little bit of grappling, and jiu-jitsu as well. So I kind of got to start with everything, which I liked too, right? And I liked the idea that I can go to learn a new martial art, get better at fighting, and, you know, like, learn how to do it, and then it just built up my confidence from there. So the style I learned was kind of Gs2. It had a belt ranking system, so we started at white belt. And the thing I kind of liked about it, it seems to be different nowadays with the traditional martial arts. It seems like a lot of these like Taekwondo schools and like the karate schools, not all of them, like there's some great ones out there, but a lot of the kids, they get their black belt super fast, I find, maybe like 2-3 years, which doesn't seem very realistic to me. Like, and a lot of the times they have their black belts, but the skills necessarily don't match the belt. So one thing I really liked about it was, like, I remember my coach saying, it's gonna take you the longest to get your first belt, your yellow belt at the time, right? So that actually took me and Matt, me and my best friend, we actually got all of our belts at the same time. So we first were white belts, then we moved up to yellow belt, and then it went white, yellow, orange, green, blue, brown, and then junior black belt. We couldn't get an adult black belt, so they called it a junior black belt at the time. So we went from white to yellow in about a year. just over a year, I think. It actually took us a little longer. So that seemed like it took a long time, but when we actually got that belt, I remember thinking like, yes, we finally got that belt, right? Like there was no stripes in between, like we just finally got to our yellow belt, and we achieved it together, which was like something that was super nice, right? Like just having that relationship with my best friend and getting our belts together, that was super special to me. So getting our belts together like that is like, I don't know, just like as a kid, you earn them, right? Like, and I felt like we actually learned a skill. Like I wasn't just given it, right? So that was super important to me. It kind of gets me a little bit emotional talking about it, but it is what it is, right? So we went from our yellow belt, and then it was orange belt next, but we actually skipped our orange belt and went to green belt. And this was like probably another year or so, a year and a half. And then we skipped our green belt, or skipped blue belt, and went to brown belt. So we both got all of our belts together. We were always consistent with our training. We went there, I think there was training 4 days a week, and we never missed a day. Like we were always training. When we were kids, we always made sure we got to martial arts. His dad, like, thank God for his dad, because his dad always made sure that he drove us there. And I'm super grateful for everything that they've done for us. He always made sure we got to martial arts, and that was super, super important. Like, I'm super grateful for that nowadays, because, like, he didn't have to drive me there, you know? Like, he made sure, like, I came, and Matt made it there as well, my best friend. So that was really nice, and I'm grateful for that. And that's just something that's super important. And that's kind of the nice thing about martial arts. You meet a lot of great people, like, in the process, and just in general, right? It's those little things that go a long way, right? That you kind of look back on and just you really appreciate, right? So we got to our brown belt. So our next belt was our junior black. At this time, we were probably training for, like, I think we were probably around 11 years old. So we were training for about 5 years. So that's why I say, like, we made it to our brown belt, but, like, we were kids still. Like, we were 11 years old. And I think there was an advanced class at the time, which were like 13 to like 16, if I had to guess. It's kind of a long time ago, so it's hard for me to exactly remember. But so what happened was, at that point, we kind of needed to face the older kids at that point, right? So our coach thought it was a good idea to put us in the advanced class, which, like, was great. Like, go there and you got these older people just smoking us, right? And they're just much bigger and choking us out, and right? And that's kind of the good thing about the sport, is, like, you kind of get humbled, right? When you have to face people that are better than you, it just makes you realize how much work you have to put in to get to that level, and that keeps you motivated. Super important to be held accountable like that, right? So that was nice. And then so we had our brown belts, and actually, no, that was after we got our black belts. That's when he brought us up to the advanced class. Sorry. So I remember we had a grading for our junior black belts, and there was about 5 of us getting graded for it. And he kind of ran us through, like, striking, like, rounds with each other, like grappling rounds, jiu-jitsu rounds, all that. And we all got our black belts, right? We all put our time in, and it was a great moment, right? Like, as a kid, that's kind of what you're working towards, right? So then kept training from like 11 to 14, did the advanced class. The gyms moved locations, but I stayed with the same gym, same coach throughout my whole childhood. So I actually stopped training around 14, right around high school, for a bit. I actually had, like, when I was training for a while, and then I actually noticed I had, like, my whole body was just, like, kind of breaking down on me. I felt like super drained, super, like, my whole bones, like, my whole body was aching, my bones and everything. And it wasn't just, like, soreness, it was like my whole body was just kind of almost like it was cramping on me and like just stopping working. So I actually went to the doctor and I got some blood work done, and I had very low iron, like extremely like low levels. So I had to get on iron supplements for a while. Like it was just my diet. Like I wasn't eating enough breakfast, stuff like that. So I stopped for a while, and then I kind of my friend got into wrestling in high school, which was great because that made my defensive wrestling much better, because he became a savage at wrestling. So I stopped for a while in high school. I took a break from it. I probably stopped until I was about 19. I started like working when I was 15 in the restaurant industry. Worked my way up really quick, like went from dishwasher to pantry cook to cook all within a year and a half. So I was pretty much working full time while I was in high school. So I pretty much put priority over like making money. Like I don't come from a lot of money, so I put that first. It was just like making money, taking a break, and then just I was pretty much doing school and working full time. So actually my school kind of got neglected a lot as well. I actually kind of didn't really start taking it serious until the last few years of it, and that's kind of when I doubled down on everything and cut back a little bit on the work. But even in my summers, like when I turned 16, I started working construction with my stepdad. I was doing 66 to 90 hour weeks, like just no time for anything, just completely spent. Even as I was a 16-year-old kid, 100 pounds, right? So it was taught me a lot of like good work ethic and everything, and I kind of got that from martial arts as well. I think that's why I did so well in the restaurants and in construction, was because I just had that never like quit attitude. Like even when I was sore from like jackhammering or whatever as a 16-year-old kid who weighed 100 pounds, like I just never quit. It was just not in me to, I was told like it's just my mentality. It might have, looking back, probably should have quit a lot earlier. Like it was kind of rough, but I pushed through anyway, just my mentality. So when I was probably around 19, 20, I probably got back into martial arts a little bit. I went back to the gym because I was working out of town a lot with construction as well. I went to college for 2 years, got a degree at college, and then so I was just super busy with life. I kind of put martial arts on the back burner for a bit. Probably got back in 21, 22, right? So from there on, I kind of I started taking it a little more serious, but I was still working like long hours construction. I was trying to get in as much as possible. I did a few jiu-jitsu tournaments. So then my ranking changed because then I started training strictly Brazilian jiu-jitsu for ranking. So I had my ranking as a kid, yeah, but we started getting our ranks under Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I started off as a white belt, which I'm perfectly fine with, because it's just good to want to like have to work my way up the ladder. I like always kind of be working towards something. So right now I'm currently a blue belt, a one stripe blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've done a bunch of Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. I've probably had about 40 matches. I think I've lost about 5 and won about 35. So I'm about 35-5 is my record for Jiu-Jitsu. So I've done pretty well. I can remember my losses more than my wins, and that's kind of the interesting thing about martial arts is it's not really about just winning, it's about learning from when you have a loss. So the reason why I remember my loss is because I usually made a mistake and I got caught in something, and from when I make those mistakes, I've learned like simple mistakes like keep your hands off the mat. Like I've been triangled because my hand was on the mat, or I got kimura'd because my head was outside of the center line of the body when I was on top. So little things like that, just like they teach you, right? Or like I always remember the match, even the ones that I won. I remember the ones that I remember the opponents that were the toughest opponents. I don't really I obviously remember the wins, like when I got double golds at tournaments. Like most of my tournaments I've went like undefeated at tournaments for a lot of them. My first tournament was probably my toughest one. I was also facing like guys that were 15 pounds heavier. Not using that as an excuse. It's just there was no weight class for me at the time. Now they actually have weight classes for me. So the jiu-jitsu tournaments were great. I like it for the competition. Like I said, I've gotten lots of rounds in. They're tough because you'll have a 6-minute match, and usually you'll do like 8 of those in the day. So you're actually doing like if you don't submit all of your opponents, or if you go to decision on all your matches, because if you get really tough matches, you're gonna end up having a 6-minute round, and you're gonna do that 8 times that one day. If you compete in 2 divisions, so which I always would like to compete in gi and no gi. So with that being said, I loved the jiu-jitsu tournaments. I still love them. I'm looking forward to getting back to them eventually. But so I've also had one amateur mixed martial arts competition. So I'm 1-0 amateur MMA. So I fought a guy from Extreme Couture Toronto, I believe. And he's a nice guy, but going in there, for me, it's nothing personal. It's just about competing and getting the win. Like, I'm just determined to win, regardless. Even when I go to jiu-jitsu tournaments, I always tell myself, this is like a mental game. I always tell myself, even if I don't win all my matches by submission, I want to finish everybody. I want to get double gold. I don't want to lose a single match. If I do, so be it. I'll figure out after the fact. I'll reflect on that, fix what I did wrong, get better from it. So I would like pretty much I had that one MMA fight. I won that by TKO in the first round, and then I was training for a second fight that same year. This was in 2016. So I was training for my second fight, and I actually got injured in training about 3 weeks before. I actually dislocated my elbow pretty bad. I was trying to stop a takedown from my best friend, who's a savage wrestler, and I usually do this one reversal, but the one time I tried it, I just planted out the wrong way and my elbow popped out. So that was like a big bummer for me. Like, I was kind of crushed that I couldn't fight, but ultimately it ended up giving my best friend an opportunity. Like, he's actually a weight class lower than me. The fight was at 135, and he fights at 125. So at the time, I believe he had one fight, and he was 1-0, and I was 1-0 as well. So, and he just fought about a couple months earlier. So my coach asked if he would take the fight, which like I was amped for, because then I would get to see how my friend would do against the kid that I would have been fighting. So he actually stepped up and weighed in with his clothes on and everything, and he still took the fight, right? I think even I don't know if it's like the commissioner or whatever, the guys who like checking the weight and everything, he's like kind of looking at my coach like, why is this guy weighing in with his clothes on? Isn't he a little small for the weight class? And he's like, don't worry about him, kind of thing, right? Like, he's gonna be fine. And sure enough, my buddy took the fight. He went in and he almost finished him in the first round. He got him down. Like, my buddy's a great wrestler, great, like, pretty well-rounded, good at jiu-jitsu as well. But he was able to get this kid to the ground. Like, just most people wouldn't be able to stop his wrestling at that level, right? So he got this kid to the ground and he submitted him in the second round, which was great to see. I was happy for him. He also got the opportunity to meet GSP at that, which was pretty awesome too. Most all the fighters did at our gym, which was pretty cool. And then he hooked me up some of his fight gear from the fight, which was pretty sweet. And he did a call out to me after his fight, like, which was awesome. So some things about, like, things that martial arts have taught me is so my coach, he's instilled like certain values into me since I was a kid. Like he says, like, the 3 R's of life, which is like respect, restraint, and responsibility. I'm always respectful to people regardless. I always give people respect and hope for it in return. If they don't give it back to me, then that's when they kind of lose my respect. That's what he's always taught us from when we were a kid. And then responsibility is just being responsible. Like, he always was big on, like, your home life's first, your schoolwork second, and then the gym is third, right? And I respect that. Like the education was super important. Your home life's obviously number one, and then and then the gym comes last, right? Now, for me, like, sure, I probably put the gym before school realistically, but I'm not going to tell him that, right? Uh, so the good thing, like, it taught me a lot of good values, and it taught me the most important thing I think it taught me was the confidence, right? Like, just knowing that and like just competing against bigger people, not being afraid of bigger people my whole life. Like, I don't care if you're bigger than me, and if you try picking on me, I'm just not gonna take it. Like, I don't care if I end up losing the fight. Like, I'm not afraid to lose. So that's one thing about me. Like, and I'm not gonna go looking for a fight. I'm gonna, if anything, just like try to avoid it. But I've had tons of instances in like high school or whatever. Like, I remember I was in grade 9 once. A guy, he was in grade 12, and he was like some super popular kid, and I was like, if you see me in grade 9, I was like a Muppet. My hair was like in front of my eyes. I just looked like some kid that, like, perfect to pick on, right? But little did people know I had a big background in martial arts, right? So the one guy, he tried to pick on me. He's like, because somebody mentioned to him, like, oh, this kid can fight. And he looked at me like, yeah, right, like, this kid can't fight. He's like, so then he comes up to me and says, hey, do you want to go outside and go box, like, after school? I was like, you know what? Let's do it right now. Like, let's do it. I don't need to box you. I said, if you want to fight, I'll fight you right now. I'm not afraid of you. And then he's just like, oh, like, you see his tone change right away. And, like, it's almost like he didn't want to get embarrassed in front of his friends if he got beat up from the small Muppet-looking kid. So that was one thing. That's kind of brings me into my next point. Like, I just want to talk about, like, what my thoughts are on bullying. I'm completely against it. Like, I mean, it's one thing if you want to bully me, I'm okay. I can handle it. Like, I have pretty tough skin. I've been through some stuff, and I can handle if somebody wants to pick on me. It's not a big deal to me. I'm not afraid to lose. I'm not afraid of somebody bigger challenging me. Now, I'm not just going to fight you just because you challenge me. Like, if you put me, I'm going to try to avoid the fight regardless, because there's just no point of fighting out on the street when I can get in the ring and fight somebody that's actually trained, right? I have nothing to gain by fighting somebody on the street. However, if you pin me in a corner and don't give me a choice, I will fight. I'm not afraid. So I've always tried to, like, avoid that, but it also, like, fired me up when I see, like, some people, they would just they would pick on kids that were, like, super vulnerable, right? So people tried it to me at first, and they realized real quick I wasn't going to take it, and then nobody messed with me. So kind of just built up that reputation in high school. And then I seen some other kids getting picked on too, like from much bigger kids, right? Like, same thing, like, small kids. It's always like these smaller, vulnerable, kind of, like, I say nerdy, but nerdy in, like, a good way. Like, they're different. They just like to play video games. They're not really athletic. And then you get guys going up to them, like, trying to pick on them. So, like, I would always be like, hey, like, what's your problem with that kid? Like, and then, like, oh, like, nothing, I'm just messing around. Like, no, you leave them alone. Like, and I'd kind of put them in their place. And then, and I would, like, follow it up with, like, a threat, kind of, right? I'd be like, if you don't leave him alone, you and I are going to have a problem. And I've done that multiple times. I've done that for a few friends, because I don't feel good about people bullying others to try and make themselves feel better about themselves. So I don't tolerate that crap. It's just something that's very low, and it's like an insecurity on their part, right? A lot of the times these guys can't even fight themselves, like, and even if they could, you're still a bully, and I'll still stick up for the kid. Like, so pretty much my thoughts on bullies, how I've dealt with them. So it's helped with my confidence more than anything, martial arts, right? Just going back to that a little bit. Yeah, it's just great for your confidence. I'm not saying go out and fight people. I'm always saying, like, use it as a last resort. If you want to fight, honestly, the best way is to get in the ring and compete. It's a lot scarier when a crowd of 500 people are watching you, and you're fighting somebody that is also trained to take your head off as well, not just some guy randomly on the street. Not saying street fighters can't fight, because a lot of them can, but you're fighting another trained fighter who's just as skilled or maybe more skilled than you. It's a challenge, right? So if you want to test yourself, definitely get in the ring, get into Gs2 tournaments, and don't be afraid like of bigger people. Like, I'm gonna tell you about one more story here with like bigger people. Like when I was younger, I was probably about 14 at the time. This was after I just pretty much stopped training, but I was like, I learned a lot to this point, right? So I was pretty confident with what I knew. I was about 100 pounds, maybe about 5'1". Even now, I'm still a small guy. I'm like 135, 5'5". But what happened was, we were at and this was just playful fun, but like my brother would always mess around with me, and this was like, he actually kind of like left me alone once I learned martial arts. But when I was older, probably about 14, he's 8 years older than me, so he's about 22, and he's probably about 5'10", 180 pounds. So he's a pretty big guy. He's a construction guy, so he's strong, right? And he's like, oh, like somebody made a joke like I could probably take him, like at the family barbecue or whatever, right? And I was just like, he's just like, yeah, right. And he kind of like pushed me by the head. I'm like, let's go now if you want, like just playing around, right? Like let's do it. And he's just like kind of grabbed me by the head. So then I shot down for a double leg, and I like literally slammed him into the shed. It dented the whole side of the shed in, and I ended up picking him up and slamming him and getting him down on his back. I got on top of him, right? So, and then eventually I did get cross-side on him, and he was much bigger, and he just picked me up. Like, he kind of like picked me up and like lifted me up because he was so much bigger and stronger at the time, and he just threw me in the pool, right? But it was pretty funny, like even being able for him not to be able to stop me from taking him down and getting on top of him for that slight second. It was pretty cool just to see that, like, even when he was trying to fight against me, he couldn't stop what I was doing to him. So that's one of the coolest things about martial arts. It gives you that confidence, right? And you know you're at least capable of holding your own, and even being a smaller guy, right? Yeah, like if I run into somebody bigger who's trained, like, it's going to be a tough go probably, unless I'm that much better with my technique, right? So that's why I'm always trying to focus on becoming the best version of myself. Just keep working on my craft, trying to master the art of Muay Thai, boxing, and Jiu-Jitsu, along with wrestling as well. I'm always working on all this stuff. Even when I'm not training, I'm studying fights. I'm studying the best at what they do, and I'm trying to implement it in my game. I'm trying to work on all my holes and work on all my weaknesses, because regardless of what anybody says, even at the highest level, you have a weakness, and somebody will exploit it. It's your job to try and work on it and make it so it's so sharp that it's very hard to exploit it. It can still be exploited, because the whole fighting game is crazy. Like, there's ways to trick people into opening up certain positions or whatever, right? But so yeah, my competition, bullies, confidence and respect, the martial arts has taught me. One other thing about martial arts I want to talk about is just like all the people you meet through like learning martial arts. It's like you meet a lot of respectful people, especially with the gym I grew up. My coach was all about respect and loyalty. So like the people you meet, he won't let just anybody join the gym. If you're a bad person, he's not going to let you join, which I love. Like, you don't want people coming in and thinking that they can just pick on, like, just come beat somebody up, right? It's like, no, if you come into the gym and you try to beat somebody up, you're probably going to get put in your place and be humbled, right? So, and through, like, training with my coach, I've met other great coaches. Like, his coach comes down to do seminars. He brought in a guy who I train with Muay Thai now, and my boxing with as well. He brought him in for a seminar. So that was all really good stuff. Like, and through those people, I've met even nicer people as well, right? So, and you kind of build these relationships with people and see people grow as martial artists, and it's really cool to see. And you get to face different styles, and it's just, I'm 30 now, but like, even when I take breaks from martial arts, I always have to come back to it. Like, it's just, without doing it, I'm like a completely different person. I'm super agitated all the time. It's what I'm truly passionate about. So I always need to be training, and when I do train, I feel amazing. It's like a high in itself. Like, if you're like, if you're trying to get started in martial arts, one thing I recommend is find people like coaches and everybody who actually really care about seeing you do well, and they hold you accountable as well. Like, they want to fix your mistakes. They want to be honest with you, right? And it might seem like they're being tough on you sometimes, but ultimately, it's a very dangerous job, like, in a sense, right? Like, if you're a coach of an athlete, a fighter, or if you're just teaching people martial arts for self-defense, even, right, for the street, like, you have to really hold your students accountable, and like, you can't like let them get away with something that you know is not going to work on the street, in the ring, competition, whatever, right? Because if you do, then they might go out on the street, get in a fight, whatever, and they get pummeled, and they're like, what was I training for, right? Like, I lost this fight because like, I didn't know how to block a hook or a jab, or, you know, this guy kicked me in the face, I didn't know how to catch a kick, like, I didn't know how to defend myself, right? So you always kind of have to, like, that's why I'm big on like learning all styles of martial arts as well. Like, I want to be very well rounded. I want to know how to do Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. In case the fight ever does happen to go anywhere, especially being a smaller guy, I need to know how to handle myself in all those areas. Even if I don't necessarily win the fight, I have a much better chance of surviving on the street. For me, that's the most important part, is being able to survive. And that's why, like I said, I'm not afraid to go against bigger opponents, because on the street, you don't know which guy you're going to run to. You might run into a huge guy, right? So I'd rather feel comfortable in the ring with a guy that's way bigger than me. In case it ever happens outside, at least I'm kind of familiar with that uncomfortableness, right? So always kind of make yourself uncomfortable. I know it's hard for a lot of people, especially beginners. I wouldn't say necessarily at the beginning. I would say start with a good gym that wants to build you up slowly. You can work with good training partners, good sparring partners, people that aren't going to beat the crap out of you, but they're going to push you to as hard as you need to be pushed. And don't take it personal. Like, if you feel like they might have went a little hard on you, unless they are actually like trying to knock you out, like if they're just going a little bit harder than, if you're having a hard time touching them or hitting them, but they're not hurting you, they're helping you. Like, they're making it so they're not going to give you anything for free, right? So don't take it personally. They're trying to help you get better. Stick with it. Stay consistent, and always be trying to learn. Like, that's all I can really give for advice. And find people that like really care about you. Like, don't just go to a gym who wants your money. In this, like, in MMA in general, there's a lot of gyms out there that just want your money, and they'll give you your black belt in 3 years, right? Like, but to me, I don't want to be given anything. I want to earn what I've earned, right? Like, so if you want to get started in martial arts, definitely find a good coach, somebody who cares about you and takes it really serious. Because if you do go out on the street and you think you have good self-defense skills, you want to make sure they actually work. You don't ever want to have to use them, but someday you might have to. So if you ever have to, make sure that they work. And same with your competitions as well, right? So, but I mean, mentally, it makes you so much stronger. The longer you do it, the more comfortable you will get, and then you will actually be helping other people kind of with that confidence and everything as well, right? And you can actually pass on your knowledge, which is probably the most satisfying thing. Like now I'm starting to coach a few people, which is great. Like I have a lot of fun coaching like a younger kid. I coach my girlfriend sometimes, so just super fun. I love teaching people as well, and it's a good way to learn and keep your skills sharp as well. So I really appreciate everybody listening. That's kind of like my martial arts journey. Like there is a little more to it, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So I appreciate everybody watching. If you want to give it a like, comment, subscribe to my channel, that'd be great. So yeah, thanks for listening. Have a good day.